Oops, I forgot to do the intro. Hold on. I know, but I can still do the intro.
It's not coming up.
I paid good money for my intro. Where'd it go? Here it is.
Hold on to your butts.
There we go. Now my body is ready.
That's a good.
That is an epic intro.
Pretty sweet, right?
I like whatever you paid for it, worth it.
Every penny.
All right. Well, good morning. We got nobody watching.
So yeah, there was the upset between the two. That I told you. Apparently set up too.
Is it still set up?
It's still set up, but the other one had everybody. I just went over there and told them to come on to this one.
Oh, well, thank you.
So we are.
I have no idea how that happened.
Huh.
I don't know either.
You set up on YouTube?
Correa, can you do me a favor and spam the other one to get everybody over onto this one? Because, technical difficulties. What is Nerds and Heresy without that?
See, Mason used to do all this, and then he kind of backed out.
I feel so useless. Like, I am literally a placeholder.
You're not useless. You know that. You fill the space when there's silence.
I see what I did.
What did you do?
I shared out the one that everybody's at. That's not this one.
Nice.
Oh, so you're the
That's
culprit.
your fault.
That's my bad.
It wasn't
my
my
fault.
fault this time. That was still
It's
my
everyone's
fault. I don't know how 2 got created. Bet my cat ran across my keyboard.
Yeah.
That's
One
usually
of
what
the
happens.
cats.
Just in case
Anyway, hi everyone. Welcome to Nerds and Heresy. Those of you that have tuned in,
how do I
those of
end
you
the
that
other
are
one?
showing up, give it a second.
Yeah, we'll let people
We're
filter
working
into
on
the
it.
Correa says, Ricky, it's still your fault.
It is. It's my fault.
Let's see.
I will reshare this particular one to the Discords as well so that we can make sure that this comes out right. Deadpool
Okay.
announcements.
The one that came up on my YouTube feed is the correct one. So
Okay. That should pop up
Okay.
in a second.
There are multiple entities working on solving the problem.
Yeah, I am done now. I'm going to stop and let everybody do their thing.
you're the best people.
All right. I'll go ahead and say hi. Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's very top-notch, professionally produced episode of Nerds and Heresy. Tonight we have 2 very special guests. We have Brad and Seamus from AlternateMedia. Why don't you guys give us some introduction? Tell everybody about you guys. Who are you? What you got going on?
I'm Brad. That's me. I'm that guy.
You look like the Brad.
Right, don't I?
Oh, so he looks like the Seamus.
How dare you?
You almost look like 2 evil henchmen.
I just love that they're wearing matching hats. Yeah.
That's what it is.
We have a theme.
So yeah, a little bit about alternate media, and Seamus can definitely fill in any of what I miss out on. But we are theists, but definitely not in the conventional sense. Definitely not conventional Christians by any means. And we try and bring a little historical and cultural context to an understanding of the Bible, and is why we are unconventional.
Yeah.
Which y'all do a fantastic job of.
Thank you. Him more than
you.
Yeah, no, and a lot of by unconventional, it's to the point where we've basically people don't even call us Christian anymore.
We've been wholeheartedly rejected by the Calvinists.
Yeah,
I feel weird calling y'all Christian because it doesn't fit.
Yeah, right.
It's not super hard to get rejected by Calvinists, though. I just gotta say, like,
Right.
if you say one thing that's not within their own predisposition of
You have to be elect.
Yep. True.
If you're not, sorry, bro.
There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Didn't get elected.
not anymore. Never could, never
The
will.
decision has been made.
It was made before you were born and will be determined long after you're dead.
Yeah, but somehow that's still my fault.
Yeah, it's absolutely your fault because you're the placeholder for that problem and that particular decision. So therefore,
Right.
you are at fault.
At fault
I just love that
directly.
they cite Judas as their part of their defense for that. Anyway, but that's another thing. Anyway, y'all have anything else to add?
That's what we do. You know, we like history. We like Judaism. We like studying. We like beer. We like whiskey
Oh yes.
And cigars.
and cigars.
Oh
Yeah.
damn it!
And hats.
And I don't get two of those three things I don't get to have right now.
All good things. Oh, because you're
I'm out in the
inside.
field, and I just don't have. I happen to not have beer or whiskey at the moment.
that's sad.
I know.
Sad
Oh, wow.
panda.
Sad
What
damn
are
it.
you guys drinking?
I see one's drinking a beer. The other one looks like tea.
I don't know what
Oh,
Brad's drinking.
it's a
I'm just having a
koozie.
beer. Yeah, it's in a Yeti koozie
Oh, okay. Ooh,
Yep.
fancy.
because I'm
I'm-
not sponsored by anybody, so I cover up.
Right. Yeah, I'm doing Pumpkin, which is an imperial pumpkin ale by Southern Tier, which is a pretty local brewing company here, I think. And yes, I am that person when it comes like pumpkin season. I'm that
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
You go full on white girl?
Oh, yes.
Me
Oh,
too.
good. Well, at least
Yeah.
somebody does it for me. I feel really bad. It's like everyone's like, "Oh yeah, white girls love this shit," and I'm just like, "I'm the whitest you can get," and I'm not there. So it's good to know that I have a replacement.
Right.
One of my-
That's me.
One of my favorite beers is a
Constant.
Sam Adams
Yes.
seasonal Oktoberfest.
Yes.
Yes.
That thing is
I get so excited when it comes out.
Yep. It lets you know fall is around the corner.
Yep.
That's
And,
that's what my backup is.
Yeah, we also
When I
got
finish this one, I will be having that one.
Is it the same one? The pumpkin ale?
Oh,
Jacko?
oh no, that's not the Jacko. I've got the Oktoberfest.
Oh, see, I've got both.
See, we both came with backups.
everybody's prepared but me.
It's crazy how much this one tastes like liquid pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
It's almost
Yeah.
weird. It's
I
it's
love
it's
it.
so
Yes.
weird. It's good, but it's like I don't feel like I'm tasting beer. I feel like I'm tasting something else. I don't know. It confuses my brain.
Blended
Yes.
pumpkin pie.
All right. Well, you guys want to get the conversation started?
Oh man.
If anyone is watching has any questions, by the way,
Pop them up, man.
feel
I'm
free to
all
ask.
for it.
Love
this is a very
questions.
general, open discussion Q&A type. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I was gonna say we're always Seamus and I are pretty much always open to talk about any of the like the problematic doctrinal issues
Yeah.
in Christianity from a biblical perspective, because that's what we do.
And I don't actually. So you and Brad and Captain Dadpool. Is your first name? Is it Ricky?
Ricky.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I call you that? Or
You can call Ricky.
No, you
Okay.
can't call him that. You have to call him Pastor. What was it?
Backstreet.
Backstreet.
Pastor Dadpool?
Pastor Dadpool. Actually, Pastor Dadpool.
But yeah, you and Brad have like talked before, and I've never, other than seeing you through the lens of a TikTok video. So
I'm much less abrasive in person. I'm much less intellectual in person too. I'm not as good live.
No, it's
You know,
but it's good to be here and to meet you finally and actually get to talk to you face to face. Well, I guess kind of face to face. COVID face to face.
This is face to face, COVID style.
This
I
is
mean, this is
face-to-face
legitimately
by COVID
meeting people
standards.
I'm meeting you for the first time, and it doesn't matter the fact that you're like thousands of miles away.
Yeah, well,
Technology is cool.
Technology is great, and it also has proven. Okay, for those of us that I have friends that I'll put there, but for those of us that like have any sort of disability or any sort of learning problems, they have proven with COVID the fact that everything can be put online, and there are always new ways to teach. So I don't know, just throwing this out there, but you guys kind of opened up the window there. But I am absurdly upset that everything's going back to normal when there was an obvious increase in learning for some like for those that have particular learning disabilities, and I am upset by this.
We got our first question.
Hey,
Oh,
favorite verse
man.
to debate about dog.
Dogs?
No, DAWG dog.
I think I know which verse is mine. It's the fact that they misspelled God the first time. It is dog. So all hail God. Dog.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, go on.
I'll let. I think Brad knows where I'm gonna go. I think my favorite one is honestly the John's I am.
Oh
statement.
yeah.
Ooh, that's a
That's my
good
favorite
one.
Oh, that is a good one. We could talk about
That's a
that.
really good
Yeah,
one.
and it was like I love Bart Ehrman's works. I have like all of his books, and I've even taken a couple of his classes online. And that's even that is one thing that he could have done better on in his book, How Jesus Became God.
Mhm.
He at the end of it, he still is making a very particular claim. He's claiming divinity and not God, which there is a difference, and Bart Ehrman does make that distinction. But he still, I feel like he still missed the whole I am statement, which is my favorite verse to go on.
How do you think he missed it?
So he in his book, he basically says that when Jesus says I am, he's making a clear reference to the I am from Exodus 3. And I would argue that he's not, because there is no I am statement in Exodus 3.
Isn't it? He argues that he's referring to that when Moses was afraid to go because he has a stuttering problem, God says, "Tell them that I am sent you." Something to that effect, if I'm remembering correct.
Yeah, Moses asks, this is after the stuttering thing, but he's like, "Who should I say sent me to you?"
That's it. Yeah.
And what is your name is what he's asking, and he says, "Ehyeh asher ehyeh," which doesn't mean I am, but to say that Ehyeh sent me to you. And so Ehyeh in Hebrew is future perfect tense, so it's I will be, not I am.
Yeah. And I am that I will become is another.
It's in the Mishnah, it is interpreted to mean I will be with you now, and I will be with you in the future. Like
Which means so much more.
Yeah.
I think.
I feel like I'm diving into some really deep intellect right now.
But I love going
I am, I will be, I could be, I would be. Grammar class all over again.
To be or not to be.
That is the question, man. That is the question.
Yep. But yeah, that's my favorite one because, every time that's the first time, hey, I don't think that Jesus claimed to be God. And they're like, what about I am? And I'm like, okay, yeah. He never, ego eimi just means I am he. It doesn't even mean I am when Jesus says that in John. I think it's chapter 8, like 50. Yeah, it's ego eimi, which is I am he. So it's not even just the I am. And then, of course, when you retranslate from the Hebrew, you have I will be. So it's actually not. And in the Young's literal translation, it's not rendered I am with capital letters. It is I am he. There's a couple of other older Greek translations that are much more literal that don't capitalize the I am, trying to make that reference to the Exodus 3 account. But it's become such a traditional interpretation that all interpreters and translation companies just leave it that way.
I have a question.
Sure.
Because this is way out of my reach when it comes to any sort of just any sort of academic. When was John, like the book of John, written versus the book Exodus?
John's written about 90 to 95 AD.
Yeah.
And Exodus is
Exodus. So there's a couple of
1600.
datings. There's the traditional dating. The traditional dating is going to be 1450 BC, and then the more archaeological dating is going to be closer to 533 BC, before the Babylonian exile during the First Temple period. So it depends on which dating method you're going to go with, but the more liberal one would be the 533 BC.
Well. Those archaeologists. Anyway, I just wanted to know because people are saying that John is alluding to the book in Exodus, right? Or that phrase in Exodus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bart Ehrman
But
was
Exodus
saying.
didn't exist until after John was written.
No, it 533
existed.
BC.
Wait.
No,
So John was
Exodus-
written when?
Exodus
90
Old
AD.
Testament, John
90?
In the 90s AD,
Okay.
though.
And then the other one is
Exodus was
500
BCE.
AD?
BCE.
Yeah, BC.
BCE. Oh, I'm sorry.
Exodus is in the Pentateuch.
So I was like, this isn't making sense.
Genesis.
This isn't making sense at all. Okay, so then
You just
if
went to the
Exodus was
Ark
written first,
Encounter
that makes
exhibit.
sense.
How did you not know this?
There is so much. There's so much more than
Didn't-
just
didn't-
knowing when books are dated.
Did Ken Ham teach you nothing?
Ken Ham has taught me nothing. Nothing but hatred. And also sadness. Lots of sadness and self-pity.
There we go. We have a wolf in our midst.
There he is. Yeah, those archaeology sorts.
Oh, you pissed off
We
Seamus.
lost
Did we
Seamus.
kick Seamus?
Oh no! I have said something wrong.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Moderators, what I tell you about that? My moderators
Come
are
on,
trigger
guys.
happy on the
Oh my gosh.
bandwagon.
Ridiculous.
Oh no. Well, so I would say my favorite verse actually to debate then, while Seamus is gone, I'm going to steal the limelight here. John 1, definitely. John 1:1.
No.
Can you
Yep.
quote that for me? I don't know these.
In the beginning,
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was
Word
God.
was God.
Or alternatively, what the Word was, God was.
How do you feel about John 1 being potentially a inspired, at least? Oh, there he is.
Oh no, poor Seamus. The internet kicked
Hey.
the butt. Oh, hey, there he is.
Yeah, I tried to leave a comment.
I saw
No,
the
you
comment.
did. I see the comments.
I figured
It's
you'd
like,
back.
oh no.
How do you feel?
Oh
Now
no.
his internet
Oh
kicked
no,
it.
now
Wow.
his internet
Wow.
kicked
We're
it.
just going in a
How do I
circle.
feel about what?
Everyone-
Ricky, I'm never gonna know the answer.
What's what?
Can
We
you-
heard,
Ricky,
how do you
restate your
feel
question?
about, and then you
You
cut
froze.
out.
Hurricane. It
No.
actually did shut us off in like a circle. That was weird.
Yeah. So your question, you said, how do you feel
yeah.
about? And then it cut you off.
John 1 being a inspired, or at least a different poetic form of Proverbs 8, where it is like this self-attestation of Sophia, the goddess of wisdom, when she tells before God created everything, God created me, and I was with God. How do I feel about that?
I definitely think that John 1 is heavily appealing to Proverbs 8 and the institution of wisdom. Wisdom there, as you indicated earlier, speaking in the feminine, which is an interesting thing all on its own in a Judaic context.
Hey, Eddie.
But also it's... Hey, Eddie!
Hey.
It is directly and thematically repeating Genesis 1:1 for a reason, and there is some interplay there even between Genesis 1:1 and Proverbs 8 that is fundamental in understanding John 1:1. So it's
Well, that in John 1:1 is almost an exact word for word copy of the Targums from Jonathan.
is a Targum Yonatan.
Yeah, Targum
I
Yonatan
believe.
Genesis.
Yeah.
It's an Aramaic paraphrased version of the Torah that dates to about 200 or 100 BC. Can't remember which one.
It's just prior to the first century.
Yeah, it's right there in the Second Temple period era. Torah scrolls written in Hebrew are an incredibly expensive and long endeavor. So very few people had access to one. But Aramaic is a common tongue, and writing a paraphrased version of what you could remember from memory or from song was a little bit more popular at the time. And the Targums read exactly the way John 1:1 opens. And so I think John, being a Jew of the time of the Second Temple period, likely didn't have access to a Torah scroll, but definitely had access to a Targum, and was probably specifically using what he would consider as like a paraphrased version of Scripture for him.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that before.
Yep, it's almost word for word. It's crazy. But in the Aramaic word for word, memra, has the same have a very similar implication to the word logos. So,
Memra.
yeah.
So this is an interesting question. As far as inerrancy of their text, it depends on what you mean by errancy. Do Jews acknowledge that the Torah has textual errors in it, such as spelling mistakes, syntactical errors, grammatical errors? Absolutely. And a great many of their teachings and philosophies are entirely built on those mistakes, because they believe that the Torah is perfect in the sense that absolutely no letter is out of place or placed without intention. So if a word is misspelled, it was done so for a reason, to kind of send up a flag that there's probably a deeper meaning to what's being written there that you're intended to understand. One of the examples that I give of this pretty frequently is in Genesis 2:7. It says that God formed man from the dust of the ground. The word formed there is the Hebrew word yatzar. It's spelled yud, sadeh, and resh. But in this particular verse, it's spelled yud, yud, sadeh, resh. So there's an extra yud, which seems like a bit of a redundancy. But from this and in other aspects that we derive from the verse, it is derived that man was created with two souls rather than one, or two natures, as it were. One being the nefesh, or the animal soul, and the other being the neshama, or the divine soul.
Yetzato.
I have a question. I'm probably going to say this a lot tonight. So you're saying that God can speak to us through errors?
That's not just through errors, but very specifically, like that philosophy is only very specifically applied to the Torah itself, like the five books
So
of
it has
Moses.
nothing to do with people making mistakes. So people that make mistakes constantly are not closer to God. I just want to make this clear. That's just following the logic here.
I like that interpretation.
Not exactly. And
I feel like
part
people
of
that
the-
make mistakes are closer to God because they err, right?
So that
and
actually,
God's speaking to them through their problems and their errors.
believe it or not, that actually is.
But there's a whole school of
one
thought you
way.
just stumbled
Oh
on.
my God! Yeah, I just opened up a bag of worms.
No, you did. This is an awesome teaching from the Tanya, actually,
Yes,
and
please
other
do. I love this.
other
Tell
parts
me.
of Jewish philosophy is actually that, yes, so those who have made more mistakes in a way are closer to God, in the simple aspect of, right. So if you think about your standing in life, and not everybody begins with the same level of advantage, let's say, and so somebody who has grown up in a religious family, for what it's worth, if we accept the premise of religion in being true, and that, there's good and bad and you should strive for the good and less for the bad, right? If we accept that premise, then those who were born into a religious family, and so they really haven't had the opportunity to do that much wrong in their lifetime, let's say that they've climbed the ladder one rung or two rungs, whereas somebody who has come from a much more disadvantaged position in life and has now climbed to the same level, they have traversed a longer distance in their walk, so to speak. Ergo, they are actually closer to God because of that.
Okay. So I have to point this out because Morgan said something funny earlier. Well, hey Ricky,
Thanks for the super chat.
Hey, yeah, super chat, awesome. I feel like God is watching over you in Iraq and invoke your faith in any way when you're serving. That's all you, Ricky.
Yeah, that's a $5 question though.
Hey, yeah, $5, man. Spill the beans.
I feel like, I mean, I guess yes. I guess I don't really know how else to answer. I feel like it's a $5 question with a 5-cent answer. I was still a Christian at the time. I still believed like God was watching over me. At the same time, I was immersed in a third world country, for lack of a better term, and I was seeing things that most people don't get to see or don't have to see. And it was troubling. Of course, they all worshiped a different God. And there was no music or art was allowed. women are all covered up. You're not allowed to take pictures of things. So it's like this such a oppressed like area. It's like if only they believed in the same God that I did. So I felt blessed and watched over by God. Sure, when I was there. Yeah. Also, nothing really bad happened to me, and there were several times where it could have.
Checkmate, atheists.
So yeah, sure.
I feel like that's a self burn. Those are really rare, by the way. Self burn, because he's talking because he's an atheist now, and he's like, and God saved me.
I'm trying to channel my inner former Christian that I've stuffed down into a little cage.
That's not healthy. At least give him some air.
That's what I just did. I just gave him some air. That's what that was.
Okay. Morgan made a comment earlier, though. I wanted to jump back to, and I want to jump back into this error thing. But with that first, the first Torah that you said had that mistake where it had the two souls, two things. Was that an original, or was that a copy made that people have read? Or then he made this comment as well, which is if people who make mistakes.
Oh, is this one?
God. Yeah, that's the one. So as opposed to was that the original, or what are they copying it down? Because if they were copying it down phonetically versus grammatically, somebody could have stuttered saying the word, and that's why they wrote it down twice.
Well, so far as we know, any copy of the Torah today is identical to the original that was written, or at least identical to the oldest versions that we have. And the Qumran caves played a big role in that. So I don't know that I know an answer to your question.
Okay.
What I can tell you is that in that part, so it's an interesting thing, because that word is actually used several times in that chapter, and it's spelled correctly every other time. That's the only time that it's not. And I think it's actually used before and after that instance, whereas that's the only instance where it's not spelled correctly.
Seamus is freaking out right now because he's like, I know the answer.
Right, so he does too, though.
So we can table this, we can shelf it until he gets back and hear from him, because I am totally up for hearing his answer, because I do want to know the origin of like the first telling of this error showing up in the book, if it's not from the first copy. So I want to hear from him on that. And also, and then I still want to talk about how people that make mistakes are closer to God. And I do get that they go through more challenges, and therefore they can what's the term, nirvana in Hebrew, or not Hebrew, in Hindi, right? Hindu.
Yeah.
Where like they go through more struggles, and they can release more of themselves to obtain nirvana, which I find fascinating. And oh, there he was. Oh no, he's back. Okay, good. Don't be not afraid, for we are with you.
No,
hey, Rachel, we used to be cable guys. Like, we're totally aware of like what we're supposed to do at this point. We're just lazy.
Aw.
Plug
it in. Unplug it and plug it back in.
Good.
No, so
I was listening.
Seamus, darling, before you disappear again on us, I would like to know the answer to my question, because apparently you know this.
Yeah. Okay. So there's I did a lot of biblical scriptural comparison, especially with the Qumran scrolls. So for the longest time, the oldest Torah scroll copy that we had was no more than 300 years old. The Jewish people, since their beginning of history, when a Torah scroll becomes illegible, they burn it out of respect. And so it was really hard to find ancient Torah scrolls. Mm-hmm. We had the Masoretic text.
I remember hearing about that somewhere. So that does make sense. That's why I'm kind of asking, because how do we know?
Yeah. So there's actually a ton of stipulations when it comes to copying a text. They are incredibly careful. And that's still to this modern day. But
so are the Gregorian monks, but they also like to draw penises occasionally and have captions on the page.
No, I'm not saying that but the difference, I would say, so we had the Masoretic Codex, which is a medieval text, and that's sort of the same codices that we use today for most of our modern translations. But then in the 40s, the Qumran caves were discovered, and they weren't translated until the 70s because of all the wars that were going on in Israel, and some of the scrolls are all over the place, for trading. But long story short, when they were finally translated, most of them were finally finished in the early 90s. And we finally had an idea, because these are the oldest Torah scrolls in existence. They're a little over 2,000 years old, and they're written in Herodian script Hebrew. Some of them are Aramaic, some of them are Greek. A couple of Latin ones in there are too, but the Torah scrolls are the ones we care about. And they compared the Masoretic texts that we have, that we base all of our texts, to the Qumran cave scrolls.
Okay.
And the only differences they could find were spelling differences that are the same that you would find in modern Hebrew. There's like a few words that you would spell with an extra yod in order to help guide which vowels sound, because Hebrew doesn't have vowels. And so sometimes words would be spelled in a certain way and consistently throughout the whole scroll in order to help guide the reader on how to pronounce a word. So like Chaim is spelled with 2 yods in order to let you know it's Chaim, right?
Versus Ayin.
And versus 1 yod, you only need 1 yod in order to spell Chaim, but they spell it with 2 yods to help facilitate how you're supposed to say it. Because again, no vowels.
Right.
And the spelling errors, the intentional spelling errors that Brad is referring to, are still there.
Mm-hmm.
The only spelling differences are ones for common words that just basically changed over time, but they were extra things for vowels, like extra vowels and extra yods in order to help facilitate that vowel.
Okay, so if it was put there as a phonetic instruction to how to pronounce certain things versus an actual like word of God striking paper, making this thing appear.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to see that contrast. And what Brad was saying was that there was an extra word, not just like an extra letter, an extra consonant. No, it was extra.
It's an extra letter, yeah.
Okay, just
It's
making sure,
letter,
because I want to just make sure everything.
No, and
I'll get myself crisscrossed.
The intentional spelling errors are there. Like in his particular example, the extra yod in the beginning of the word Yetzer.
Mm-hmm.
The old way in the first century to spell Yetzer is with 1 yod. And in the Torah scrolls from the Qumran caves, that error is still there with the 2 yods. And so we know whether or not it exists in the original Torah scroll or not, for at least 2,000 years, that particular spelling change has been there consistently, even into the Masoretic texts.
I have one other comment, and you said it was just a little over 2,000 years old, this scroll was, right?
Yeah.
Is there a sense of irony that this scroll, it just happens to be just about as old as Jesus?
So the Qumran community is from...
I'm just curious. Is there a conspiracy? Am I unraveling something?
No, it's not. It's everything that we're going to find. It's because the Second Temple was destroyed soon after Jesus' death. So a lot of the ancient documents are going to be from that time. And then there's going to be a huge gap from that time until basically the medieval period.
Let's be honest. We can all take a moment to be very sad about the burning of the library of Alexandria. Yeah, everybody's really sad about that. It's very upsetting. To anyone who studies history, it's a very upsetting concept.
Cheers, everybody.
F's in the chat, boys.
Alcohol. Shalom. Skull. I can't do anything.
Skull.
Yeah. No, but basically, aside from a few differences in words being spelled from back then, the way that they spelled it versus the way we spell them now, those are the only major differences between the Torah scrolls that are 2,000 years apart, and the intentional spelling errors are still there. Now, as far as original research comes on my side, I've only compared a few of these pages, and that these pages are very big pages. So I've not done a full fact check myself on both of the Torah scroll and a Herodian script scroll. I've done probably 5 pages worth of Hebrew comparison, which is honestly a lot. And it was for a project while I was at Liberty. And that's right.
Did we want to talk about Liberty a little bit? Do you want to throw that in the mix a little bit?
Yeah.
Which part about it?
We've got enough to talk about. I'm actually trying to relearn Koine Greek so I can do the same thing. I want to be able to compare the manuscripts for myself. So I'm in the process of trying to relearn that, which is going along quicker because at one point I knew it fairly well. So I'm trying to do that. So I'd like to be able to do those comparatives on my own.
But basically, to answer that question, though, as far as these traditions go, that I'm aware, and with some of the little original research that I've done myself versus reading somebody else's research, some, like scholar and accepting his authority. Those traditions go as far back as around, that time, the early 1st century BC. And this is BC, not AD. So it's actually about 100 and 200 years before Jesus was around. Those traditions have existed since then, but we don't have anything older than that. So we actually can't prove if that's an original tradition or if that's an invented tradition during that time.
It's weird hearing about like being able to go back and do the homework on it, and I'm just like, I can't even imagine trying to do the homework on that, because for one, I don't speak Hebrew. For two, I don't
actually not super hard. Now the Dead Sea Scrolls are online. You can just Google and get pictures.
I realize, but it's still like I can't just look at it and be able to tell differences, because I haven't mastered that language. So it's yeah. Anyway, Dustin, yes, I realize that you've asked this question like 3 times, so we'll go ahead and move on to it. Is there a verse that you guys find difficult to defend?
Most of the New Testament verses.
But you're Jewish, so that makes sense.
Well, we do accept the New Testament writings. We're more Messianic Jewish.
Yeah, I guess it would really depend on the context. But I guess to throw low hanging fruit here, really the first verse, just because the argument of where everything came from is one that neither side really has a completely rational answer for. So yeah, I would say that the first verse of the Bible is probably a pretty difficult one to defend. But I would say it's also equally difficult to attack. So again, low-hanging fruit.
The first verse of the whole
Genesis.
Yeah.
Oh, the most difficult to defend.
Or you mean more like to explain? Maybe would be a better word.
Yeah, if someone attacks you using it.
Yeah, I thought defense as in like somebody bring this verse up like in Ezekiel 36 about the fall of Tyre, and then like
I believe that's 26. I know that 26? One.
Oh, yeah.
26. Oh, that is the first and only time I'll ever be able to correct someone on that. I'm so excited. I'm super excited.
Might as well cut the stream while she's ahead. We're good.
Okay, anyway.
But no, yeah, I just mean in the interest of like where, when it comes to the argument of where the universe came from, it's like, okay, that verse makes a very blatant claim as to where the universe came from. And so that's a hard argument to have, because nobody has a legitimate answer on that can be documented or proven. So it's kind of a stalemate question, but it's there.
How do you feel about the like Correa brought up, the failed messianic prophecies, or the how the early Christians used verses like, was it Isaiah 34 or
53?
50, or Isaiah 9, 8.
That was literally the only one I knew at a
yes,
quote. I can't help.
These other prophecies that do not claim to be messianic, or these are not even prophecies. These other sayings that do not claim to be messianic and don't even claim to be prophetic, but the early Christians would cite those in order to show that Jesus actually was the Messiah and fulfilled those prophecies. Because the Old Testament, for those who don't know, teaches that Jesus was supposed to be a strong military ruler who was supposed to come and restore the kingdom of David. And of course, that didn't happen. He was supposed to be a conqueror, but instead he was killed by the ones he was supposed to conquer. So that's why the disciples were in such mourning after Jesus died, because that wasn't supposed to happen. They believed he was the Messiah. So then how did this happen? Well, people started making these connections, especially Paul maybe, that, hey, he actually did fulfill these prophecies. What's y'all's take on that?
So this is actually why Seamus and I receive a much more warm welcome from some Orthodox Jews than you would expect somebody who still acknowledges, at least in part, a messianic role that Jesus fulfills. And that is because even Jews acknowledge a dual messianic office or a dual messianic coming. They understand a type of two messiahs, and that's because when you do read the messianic passages, so there certainly are some that Christianity accepts as being messianic, which are not and never were acknowledged as being messianic in Judaism, but there are some in Judaism that are accepted as being messianic, and they talk about a suffering servant. Alternatively, there are others that talk about a conquering king. Now, this presents a bit of a problem because it would seem like a contradiction. How can they be both? And so it's an accepted teaching that there would be, everybody's familiar with the whole title, the Son of David, right? That's a messianic title that's pretty familiar. Not so many are familiar with the title Son of Joseph, but that is another messianic title that is acknowledged in Judaism. Now, the son of Joseph is not acknowledged as being the Messiah. In Hebrew and in Judaism, the article "the" is very important, and it will effectively change the way you understand a word. So when you say to a Jew "the Messiah," what he's thinking is the son of David. But that doesn't inherently disqualify the son of Joseph. So the son of Joseph, which is the type to this antitype, would be the Joseph of Genesis, who was sold by his brothers into slavery and served under Potiphar in Egypt and whatnot. So that's the type to the antitype that this messianic figure would fulfill. And so he would be a suffering servant the same way that Joseph was a suffering servant. And he would effectively die, which would bring about the repentance of the Jewish people and usher in the coming of the Son of David. And so it's one of those things where not acknowledging that Jesus is God is already the first step towards receiving a warmer welcome among Orthodox Jews, but also acknowledging that, there are parts of the Messianic prophecies, particularly concerning the Son of David, that Jesus didn't fulfill in his lifetime here. But there's a pretty decent argument to be made that he fulfilled the office of the son of Joseph.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I'm not sure if Brad made this clear. Basically, in first century Judaism, and not all of modern Judaism teaches this as well, but in first century Judaism, there are two different messiahs, and they understood it to be two different people because of the way the two prophecies read. So it seems like it's two completely different people. And so when you if you're talking with an Orthodox or ultra Orthodox person, they're usually pretty familiar with this concept. And me and Brad, hey, we think he was Messiah, son of Joseph, and they're like, that makes more sense. Because they understand that we're not trying to talk about a conquering king, a Davidic figure, someone that would restore the nation of Israel. It's kind of a different office entirely. And so that's the clarification. And not a lot of people are familiar that Judaism has a two messiahs concept. And even in like conservative and reformed Judaism, they don't teach that at all. So it is kind of a lesser known part of basically ultra Orthodox Judaism.
I was not familiar with that.
Yeah, I did a paper on that at Liberty. But to answer that question though, regarding like early Christians applying certain prophecies to him that were not regarded as messianic in their time, depends on the prophecy. There are some prophecies that the Targums indicate that they were, and then modern day like Rashi would say that they're not. So there seems to be a shift in Jewish thought over time going into the medieval period about certain prophecies, whether or not they were or were not messianic. But it's also a common Jewish practice to simply say fulfilled when something is done and it reminds you of something. So if I were to punch somebody in the nose and I would say, this fulfills the words of Proverbs, the wringing of nose draws blood. I'm not saying that was prophetic. I'm saying that I'm just using it as like a cheeky proof text. And that's a common thing to do in Judaism. And so that they're not doing anything out of the ordinary when they say something.
Not like, the punching in the nose. That's not a common thing to do in Judaism.
No. You just said if I proclaim it as that, and like before I do it, then that's a prophecy. I could do that. I can do that.
I'm saying that is a common practice. That's just I
have a lot of prophecy to fulfill.
I know. I'm so excited.
I got to go to Walmart.
Oh man.
No, but that's just a practice. They would if something
Brad knew where
happened.
my mind went like that. Like he was just like, and that's a problem.
Yeah, no.
I saw the lights turn on.
I opened up the wrong can. Maybe I should use a different example.
No, that was perfect.
No, it was spot on.
Um,
I shall now prophesize someone getting googly-eyed all over their car or something.
No. But that's just something that they would do.
All pranks shall now be prophecies.
Oh, man.
We
I'm
got a
so
question.
excited.
I'm so intrigued. I'm Jewish and never practiced or learned. I want to learn more now that I've deconverted from Christianity. Oh, so you are Jewish by birth, I assume?
Yes.
Yes, she is Jewish by birth, I believe.
Yeah.
She is a very mixed cultural and religious background.
So in Judaism, it's not even necessarily that they have two messiahs. There were two offices that were understood to be filled by what would be a messianic figure. Again, when you say to a Jew, the Messiah, they instantly think the son of David, the one who will be a conquering king and come in and liberate them from their oppressors and what have you. But
A Messiah, Moses.
Yeah, a Messiah is different. Moses was a Messiah to the Jews. Really, any king of Israel would be considered a Messiah.
Yeah, we tend to forget that the word Messiah, it by itself, without any definite articles in Hebrew, just means anointed one. So any king, any leader, anybody with smicha would be like a little Messiah, a little anointed one. So that's another linguistic and cultural.
Can you say that word again?
Smicha?
Smicha.
Smicha, which
Yeah.
means
basically rabbinic ordination.
oh, it's so cute. I like it. Okay, go on.
Sounds like something I spilled on my shirt earlier.
I mean, I know what tuchus is, but
Smicha, it's the Hebrew word for the laying. It's the Hebrew word for the laying on of hands. And so actually when you see that in the
I don't
New
like it
Testament
anymore.
too,
I changed my mind. I don't like that word anymore.
when you know how you see it in the New Testament sometimes, and so Christians are like, "Oh, we got to lay hands on you and pray over you."
No,
that's the power.
no.
So that's just the Hebrew word for smicha, and that actually only means you've received official ordination. It has nothing to do with like healing power. Yeah.
So now I can prophesize and then like smicha someone.
The charismatics are all squealing.
So I'm gonna throw some hands. I'm gonna touch you, and then you're gonna be blessed because I said so. I prophesize. You guys are giving me all sorts of excuses for religious actions right now, and I'm so excited.
You don't need us. Religion is full of
because
those.
I don't study religion as a whole. I study it as a cultural concept, not as the religion itself. That's not where I jump in. So hearing these tidbits, these little morsels that I'm just collecting from you, I'm just so excited because I'm just like, this explains this behavior, and this explains, like, I'm understanding the concept for Jewish grandmother very, very well, because there are things that you are saying that just make sense when that ideology is put onto someone that has been raised in that culture. So that's where my mind is going. So like, it's just interesting adding, it's just putting puzzles together. That's all. Anyway, yeah. Chris says, catch these magic hands.
Catch these magic hands.
Catch them.
So I want to talk about the Son of Man coming on the clouds. You want to do that?
Are you taking Bart Ehrman's position on that one?
I don't know.
You're not sure
we'll
yet?
see as the argument goes.
I'm not sure yet.
Yeah. 'Cause, for Brad, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ehrman's work. Basically,
I'm not familiar with his work on this topic.
Oh, look, a cat. Sorry.
Basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, so stop me anytime, Captain. But
Assuming I know more about it than you do.
I mean, I don't know. But basically, Ehrman's position is that Yeshua talks about the Son of Man as though it is a completely separate person from himself. And so the idea of, because he always talks about the Son of Man in like a third person type.
Behold, you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds. He quotes Daniel.
Yeah, and so he treats all the passages where Yeshua is referring to the Son of Man as not himself, but as another figure besides himself. And that's Ehrman's position, as far as I'm aware.
It's an apocalyptic figure that is supposed to usher in the day of judgment and the kingdom of God on earth.
Yeah.
Well,
So Valkyrie.
so that actually would still make sense in light of the idea of this dual Messiah,
Yeah.
right? Which if Jesus in his time here was intended to fulfill the office of the son of Joseph, then certainly it doesn't hurt his person at all for this Son of Man to also be the son of David who comes later, which is different.
Yeah, and I think I get where Ehrman is coming from on that position, because it does seem like that. He talks in the third person, and one could argue, maybe from our perspective, that the reason is Yeshua would consider himself after his death and resurrection as a whole nother person, as a whole nother being. And so he could be talking about his future self. And then there's the more, like, I guess, down to earth, less spiritual version of that is, it's a different person entirely. Yeah. And even if that's the case, the Son of Man is a Hebrew idiom for human being. And so it actually has very little meaning in Hebrew.
I've heard that too, that like a lot of people, a lot of scholars think it was actually originally Aramaic, which Jesus spoke. In name of Daniel, behold, you will see one like a man. Because it says like the Son of Man, but it could be behold, you see one like a man coming on the clouds, which still makes sense. And when Jesus is rebuked by the Pharisees, when his disciples are picking grain on the Sabbath, and Jesus says, the Sabbath is not made for man, but man was made for the Sabbath, or the Sabbath was not made for the Son of Man. Yeah, you got it. So it makes sense there too. The Sabbath is not for man. So I'm getting distracted by kitties. The Sabbath was not, or man was not made for the Sabbath, or the Sabbath was not made for man. Man was made for the Sabbath. Or I think I got that backwards still. You know what I'm saying?
Backwards.
Yeah, the other way.
But... Stop, flip it, reverse.
But he says Son of Man in that too, but it can also just mean man. And it actually makes more sense in that context, because when he says Son of Man, it's like he's saying, hey, it's okay that they're picking grain on the Sabbath. By the way, I am the Son of God.
Yeah,
it reads very awkwardly unless you translate it to just man.
Yeah, and then it instead of reading like, oh yeah, something greater than the Sabbath is here. By the way, I'm God's son. If you put it back in its context and render it as human being, basically he says, man was made for the Sabbath, not the other way around, and therefore human beings are greater than the Sabbath, and that is to say, your life matters more than some holiday. And so his disciples were hungry; they were picking grain. You're not allowed to do that on the Sabbath. But if you're starving, well then, are you just going to die?
It's an issue of pikuach nefesh.
Yeah, and
pikuach nefesh, a life in danger. And so in Judaism, it's accepted that outside of adultery, idolatry, and murder, outside of those three things, you are permitted to violate any of the commands of the Torah in the interest of saving another life, except for those three things.
Yep.
So I can't commit murder and be okay about it.
Yeah. There's actually a more liberal version of that too that exists in the Jerusalem Talmud of Pikuach Nefesh, and that is to say that somewhere in the Torah, I can't remember the exact verse, it's Leviticus 19 something, but you are to the righteous man shall live by these precepts. And so they say that the opposite is also true, that you are not allowed to die by them. And so if doing any of the commandments would cost you your life, you're not allowed to do it.
Does anyone know if Phil Collins is Jewish?
With a name like
every
Collins,
time, the amount of times that you guys have said "Son of Man," the song from Tarzan keeps popping into my head.
Yo,
Son of Man, Son of Man.
Yo, Phil Collins went all in on that movie.
Yeah,
and he did not deserve it.
I just have to ask because I feel like that particular song just fits very nicely right here. Yeah. Anyway,
agreed.
So fire.
There's my input.
Didn't mean to add that. What was I saying?
Okay. Is the overall consensus among Jews that God is a good God, all loving, all powerful? The evidence God himself gave seems to differ from that. Or is it more, God is God, what are you going to do? A combination.
Yes.
Of the two, actually.
Yes is the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a that our definitions of good are limited by our humanity, where God is on a completely other plane, and so there may be aspects of him we don't perceive to be good, but he's God. So what are you going to do?
Yeah, and then there's also that aspect where there are certain things God asks of his people.
Rachel would know this.
Without any religion is unknown, but it's speculated he's an atheist. Okay, talking about Phil Collins.
Yeah, sorry. I saw Rachel. She's like, his religion is unknown, but speculated.
Our logistics team here over at Nerds and Heresy headquarters is hard at work.
Yeah, they're doing great.
Phil Collins is
a religion. I'm sorry I brought this up. I side railed the whole thing. I'm so sorry. I'll just leave. It's fine.
Excuse
okay.
me, sir,
Bye,
man.
everyone.
Do you have a minute to talk about our Lord and Savior Phil
Collins?
Yes, come right in. Can I make you some coffee?
Oh,
Tell me all
speaking
about.
of,
Do you have any pamphlets?
Everyone, please
some
open up your
LDS?
hymnals in the air tonight.
How sad was it that you had to leave when you actually had an LDS guys come up and talk to you? Wasn't that upsetting?
That was very upsetting.
That's
We're all
so
dressed
sad.
up and everything.
Dude.
He dressed up and then they showed up and he
Worst
had to
timing
leave, and it
ever.
was like, no.
It's like I would have brought them in the house, set them down. I would
And
have set
he
up the camera.
converted
Like,
them.
you guys cool if we go live on TikTok while we do that?
I'm gonna do next time that they come to my house. I will record. It'll be TikTok live. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
That's my goal. I hope I didn't scare them away. I was kind of abrupt.
Oh
Like,
man,
they didn't get a word in.
Please come
They didn't get a
back.
word. I just opened. Just like, hey guys, I don't got time to entertain you. I'm getting ready for something.
dude,
like-
I had someone come to my house one time, and I had this whole library of books behind me. You can't really see it, but it's twice as large as what you can see.
Yeah.
And so I sat them down right in front of the whole thing, and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'm like, "I'm a religious expert. So, how do you want to do this?" Everything behind me is written in Greek and Hebrew.
Slide in that critical role.
Oh yeah, how do you want to do
in
this?
there? That's nice. How do you want to do this?
So
How do you want to die? Let's talk about it.
the last time I remember them coming to my house growing up, actually, like we were getting ready. I was not Torah observant at this time. I was still a Christian, and so like we were getting ready to go to church, and I opened the door, and there's these two dudes. They give me some BS like excuse about how they're looking for some member of their congregation, like they always do. And I'm just like, give me 1 minute, and like I shut the door, and I'm like, hey, Dad.
You won't
And
believe
like
who's here.
he comes running to the door like giddy as could be.
I mean, everyone always has these interesting stories with Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, and I just bribe them by being nice. That's it. I'm like,
Honestly,
you can come in the house, you can have some lemonade, you can have a cookie, but if you
Dude.
speak one word about trying to transition my belief system, you're out.
Honestly,
But
the
I
best
feel so
part-
bad because everyone rejects them, so they always take it. There's like, we would love to sit down and have like coffee. It's like, we would love this. It's like, okay, then let's talk.
Honestly, the best part is when they think that I'm on their side.
Oh, and then you turn it.
It's not that I'm not doing it on purpose, but it's stuff like,
No.
you know, when I say stuff like, well, I don't think Jesus is God. And they're like, so you are one of us. And I'm like, hold on.
Oh, wait a
not get carried
second.
away.
Let me explain.
They're like, we have a similar belief. And I'm like,
Nope, not even close. You have no idea the vast differences we in fact have. But I'm only going to give you a little taste so I don't threaten and scare you.
Yeah. But
They're like little deer. You have to be gentle and you let them eat from your hand and then you snag them. And then you have steak.
Steak.
So on that, can we talk about, because the guy that I'm going to be debating soon, the position he's going to be defending is early Christians have always worshipped Jesus as God.
define it earlier.
And I'm like, that's not, I'm really interested to see how you're going to defend this, because every writing of every church father in the 1st and 2nd, 3rd century will disagree with you. So yeah, let's talk about that.
I mean, you're right. If you were to go through, like, there are a bunch of quotes that most people will bring up from the early church fathers, and they're like, see, look, they're Trinitarian. So the problem you're going to have, the easiest one to dismiss actually, is you have to prove that Judaism teaches, because this is before they became Christianity, that Judaism teaches that the Holy Spirit is a person of God, which you can't do. That's not a thing. right? So how did the Holy Spirit suddenly become an entity to being a person? And then, but yeah, you go through the quotes that they're going to pull up. You're actually going to find that they're subordinate. They may even say things like, we think of Jesus as a divine figure, but subordinate. So more of like a polytheistic
subordinate
position.
or subservient. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much every one of them.
In fact, it's not until Augustine of Hippo, and this is even after the Council at Nicaea, that they've determined the Trinity. Augustine of Hippo is 500 AD. We finally get a solid, concrete version of the Trinity that we have today. So even up to, everyone likes to say 325 AD when the Council of Nicaea happens. That's when the Trinity finally gets defined. Yeah. They left out the Holy Spirit accidentally, so they had to have a second council in order to include it.
Wait! They left it out accidentally. Is this an error? Were they getting closer to God?
No. They define Jesus's divinity in the First Council of Nicaea, and they don't include the Holy Spirit as a divine equal co-person of God.
So
until
the Holy
40
Spirit
years
in
later.
itself is the error, and therefore is now God.
To help you out with your debate,
she's being facetious.
I'm sorry. I'm
going to answer your question, but I'm also helping you out with your debate because if you do look at some of the transcripts from the Council at Nicaea, you're actually going to find that this divinity, defining his divinity, is a compromise between two systems of belief, and they brought them together, took the best parts of both systems, and created what we now have. So to say that early Christianity believed in Jesus as divine or that he was God or in a Trinity, you would actually have to reconcile that there was actually a compromise, a great compromise, and it's from that moment forward that Christianity at large has this definition of the Trinity now, which is the one that we have, versus the one that they had back then, which is a lot more subordinate and maybe even borderline polytheist.
Yeah. The earliest council meetings were super concerned about the nature of Jesus' divinity, and like the Holy Spirit was like an afterthought. It took a back burner, and when it was all done, like, oh shit, we forgot.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened. Like 40 years later, they're like,
that's actually pretty much how it happened.
Yeah. And that's one of the, if nothing else, some Christians will still believe in Jesus as God, but at the very least, they might come away from Trinitarianism and might go into binitarianism, where they put the Holy Spirit back where it was before 380.
I think fundamentally establishing what the early Jesus movement was, and when I talk about it, I specifically describe it as that because it was not Christianity. And it didn't even resemble what we now acknowledge as Christianity. It was Judaism. It was a sect of Judaism, but Judaism all the same. And part of the way that I come to that is that, okay, Judaism has multiple sects, and especially even in this time period, there were multiple branches of Judaism that existed at the time, but they were all considered Judaism because there's one thing that they had in common. And that one thing that they all had in common is that they all accepted that the Torah possessed and contained all truth necessary to mankind. So in order to prove an early belief in the Trinity, you'd first have to be able to derive it from the Torah independently without referencing the New Testament. You'd have to be able to take just the Torah itself and build the Trinity on that, which Judaism at large, in its many sects, was not able to do at this time. And we don't really see Jesus ever speak about that or use the Torah as a reference to build that case. Furthermore, we can conclude that the early believers were a sect of Judaism because the Roman government even acknowledged them as a sect of Judaism, which means that at the very least, they still had this in common, that they believed that the Torah contained all truth necessary to mankind. So going from there, establishing the point where there was a deviation from what was Judaism into what we now know as Christianity, that becomes paramount in finding where that split happened in history. And that's actually more of a Seamus question. So I'll let him take it from there.
you want me to go over the parting of ways a little bit?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a phenomenon in history that I and some others have referred to as the parting of ways. It's not a universal term yet. That's just that's what I call it. It's the first time I was introduced to the concept, that's how I heard it, and so that's what I call it now. But essentially, this is the second Jewish revolt, about 135 AD. And it was still considered a sect of Judaism at the time, and they were going through their second revolt against Rome. During that revolt, and it's actually important to note that you're not allowed to claim to be the Messiah. And so it's important to actually realize that no one person is allowed to say, I'm the Messiah. You're not. Somebody else has to declare you the Messiah. And that's why you see Jesus kind of work that around with like Peter. He's like, who do you say that I am? I think that you're the Messiah, right? Because he's not allowed to say it himself. But anyways, so this man named Bar Kokhba, his name was different before it was Bar Kokhba. I think it was Bar
Bar-Chozeva.
And
Spell it with an extra.
basically with an S too, but
An extra phlegm.
Somebody declared him to be the Messiah, and the revolution was going really well. And so they were like, "This is the Messiah. Bar Chozeva is the Messiah." So they renamed him Bar Kokhba, and the early sect of Judaism that would later become the Christians, they had a problem with that because they believed that this Yeshua of Nazareth was the Messiah, and so they actually stepped away from the rebellion. And that dropped the revolution's numbers more than half. So now more than half of the army is no longer fighting because they don't feel comfortable with fighting for somebody they don't think is the Messiah. Basically overnight, and this is I'm condensing a lot here, but basically overnight, the rebellion fails dismally and Bar Kokhba is slaughtered. And the nation of Israel falls forever. It gets renamed Palestine because the Romans just were done with it. And
Forever?
Yeah, that's actually when it starts to get that name, is because the Romans were specifically doing that to insult the Jews, because Philistines that's the biggest Jewish insult you could think of is calling somebody a Philistine.
Oh yeah.
And the Roman word for Philistines is Palestia, right? So Palestine. So they renamed the land that, and specifically to piss the Jews off. And
none of this overlaps with Israel now.
It does. What we now know as the nation of Israel, like Israel-Palestine area.
So not forever.
It was called Palestine by the Romans first.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was just the nation of Israel, the land of Canaan, even before that. But basically, long story short, because the revolution failed, Judaism as a whole was basically like, you guys suck. You're the reason it failed. You're a traitor to your people. We want nothing to do with you and your stupid Messiah guy. If you so much as say his name, you're not Jewish anymore. And so they were so pissed that they even added a blessing to their daily prayers. Their prayers are called the 18 benedictions. They added a 19th benediction specifically against these people.
Oh shit.
And that's where the big split happens. And Judaism, the sect of the way, is no longer a Jewish sect at all. Now it's a completely different thing. And it gets all of the Jewish leadership is completely gone from it, and it is now officially a Gentile-only religion with zero Jewish guidance in its origins. And it's from that point, about 135 AD. Funny enough, that's where you start to see modalism pop up, which is the first version of the Trinity. And then from that point on, it is now its own religion, and it goes all the way to Nicaea, and it becomes a completed religion around the time of the Second Council of Constantinople. And so that's kind of the downfall of the sect into Christianity.
all of that just to point out that, so this idea that the earliest believers were all Trinitarians, they would not have been accepted among the Jews, and they definitely wouldn't have been accepted among the Jews' army numbers if they were Trinitarians, because the Jews reckon that as being polytheism. So the onus on anybody who would make that claim is to first prove that early Judaism prior to Jesus accepted any form of plurality of God, which they didn't. And you'd have to build a basis on that for why it wouldn't be out of place in first century Judaism for these followers of Jesus to believe that. And you just can't do that.
And even to help you again, and to Brad's point, no Jewish leader in the early days of the sect, ever spoke of something like a divineness of his figure. That is exclusively a Gentile thing. All of the early church fathers that basically make statements about it, all of them are Gentiles. So and Bart Ehrman makes this case in his book. It's really nothing new or even unnatural for a Gentile at this time to just simply call somebody God, because that's just what they're used to. That's part of their culture. They do this all the time. Somebody dies. He was a great teacher. You deify him. And so when this gets a hold into Gentile hands, they they can even be like, yeah, I believe in one God, but this guy's also God. Like, they really don't have a problem saying that because that's just part of their culture at the time. And so once you see the religion fall into Gentile hands, that's exactly what happens. It happens. What happens with every other Greek religion happens to this early sect of the Way once it falls away from Judaism. So historically, you'd have a hard time proving that it's a Jewish belief when you can actually basically prove that it was specifically a Gentile invention.
Yeah, but I'm pretty interested to hear what he's going to have to say.
Yeah, I am too. I can't wait to see it, actually.
That was his idea. That was the topic he picked. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. All right.
So that video was what I woke up to that morning. I woke up and I turned on TikTok and saw his video challenging you. I was
on
like,
my TV and there he
oh.
was.
Oh no, this kid just doesn't know.
Oh no.
I had so many people feel like, why haven't you responded yet? Are you scared, Captain Tadpole? And I was like, I just got my kids on the bus. Will you give me a minute?
Give me a second. Goodness gracious. Everyone's so violent, huh?
Yeah.
That's scary.
Of course I accept. It's a Tuesday for me. Anyway.
It's a Tuesday for me.
So Jesus of Nazareth was like one cult and so on and so on. Yeah, I saw that one. That's actually an awesome question because
there's a lot of answers to that.
Well, it's really about whether or not you're familiar with first century Judaism as a whole. Some of us know who Essenes were, but it's really not even until the Qumran cave, the Dead Sea Scrolls, that we even had a real idea of who Essenes were. Before we discovered those scrolls, actually, everyone thought of Jesus as an Essene. And then when we found those scrolls and read through them, we were like, yeah, Jesus is not an Essene. He's definitely a Pharisee. He had like a very Essene-like lifestyle, but he didn't have the same beliefs that they held. They were apocalyptic, but not the same in every way. And so he had much more in common with the Pharisees, apocalyptic Pharisees, than he did with Essenes. But
he self-identified with the Pharisees.
Yeah. And then so you have actually like 5 different, I think 7 officially different sects within Phariseeism. Right. So you have like Shammai, Hillel, and then there's a few other smaller fringe groups, but those are the 2 big ones. And then you got like your Ethiopian Jews, which actually frequented the temple, and we get that from Acts chapter 8. And their own sect, the Essenes, their own sect. You have the Sadducees, which was a priestly sect. And so first century Judaism at the time was by no means a unified Judaism. And so that's one thing that we tend to forget, that most Christians tend to forget, is they read the term Jew in the Bible and they think all Jews are the same here. And that's not the case. Yeah.
They fought a lot.
Yeah. There was a civil war like right before this time. Like the Jews were slaughtering each other because of the Hasmonean dynasty. And so, yeah, that's more like.
Aunt Kathy has an interesting question or concept, I guess. It's the so the sect that broke away was the Saul Paul an influencer to them type of thing. I think that's an interesting concept.
Go ahead,
not prior to the parting of ways. So the parting of ways would have happened a ways after this time period. Paul would have been an influencer still in the time period when the Jesus movement was still a sect of Judaism. Paul even recognizes and acknowledges it. He calls these followers of Jesus a sect, and he refers to them as the Way or Haderech. And alternatively, they were referred to as Nazarenes, as is common in Judaism. You call the sect started by one particular rabbi by the name of whatever town he came from. So you've got the Breslever Jews, you've got the Lubavitcher Jews. These are all individual sects that they call themselves by whatever town their rabbi came from.
Yeah, so that's a common practice. But so yeah, he identifies himself with the sect of the Way, and he was an influencer in that he helped get this sect to spread into the synagogues of the diaspora. And this new sect has a very heavy Gentile inclusion sort of philosophy, where usually Judaism is seen as more of like an exclusive cool kids club. This new sect was more about actually getting people who were not Jews and who actually don't really have the intention of converting, but to even bring them in and welcome them in and to worship as a Jew, even though they're not converted. That this was the sort of uniqueness of the sect, and that's Paul's doing. I would say that Paul is the reason that Gentiles got a hold of the scriptures to begin with, and then 130 years later, they take it and run away from Judaism because of anti-Semitism. And so anything that vaguely resembles Judaism in any way, shape, or form becomes the Catholic religion, essentially. I would say Paul is the reason it got out into the diaspora. But once he dies, it's not his fault that Christianity becomes a separate sect. He dies before he ever even heard the word Christian. So
this next question, actually, your sect of Messianic Judaism seems different than Jews for Jesus. They claim Jesus was both Messiahs. So we're not inherently denying that Jesus is both necessarily. But a fair statement would be that he's not the son of David yet, more or less. And that's not the only difference that we have with Jews for Jesus. Jews for Jesus is interesting as a Messianic organization because they don't really reflect most of what would pass as Messianic Judaism today. They're more or less Southern Baptists who still retain some of their Jewish practice. Yeah, they also don't accept the Jewish oral tradition or any of the other, extra biblical Judaic writings that Seamus and I do accept. So there are many differences. I think they're still mostly Trinitarian, also, which we are not.
Ooh, I would say
not consciously so, but yes.
Yeah, I would say
definitely has a lot of roots.
I fully agree with that statement. I have lots of feelings about that statement, but that's just because of history and things.
Early Christianity,
history has proven this to be true.
Yeah, early Christianity post Council of Nicaea, definitely heavy anti-Semite,
and continuing to be so.
Incredibly,
They changed the day that they celebrated Easter on specifically so that they would not be in concert with, quote, the detestable Jews, unquote.
Yeah. Wait. I thought, no, it's Christmas, not Easter. My bad. Sorry. I was thinking that it was a pagan.
Christmas is a whole other ball of wax.
That's true. They don't want to be around
incredibly anti-Semitic too.
the detestable pagans, right? We don't want Yule to coincide with the not thing. Yeah.
Except that it does.
Yeah. A lot of the
what do we gotta say about but then that's when the Jehovah Witnesses come in and they're like, this is why we don't celebrate these holidays.
Yeah, and that's another one of those like, oh, so you do believe the same thing.
So you do believe in what we say. No, not at all.
No, a lot of and I've gotten this question a lot from other Christians, like, where did the change in the holidays come from? Because you don't find that in the New Testament writings. It just sort of happened. And yeah, the short answer is it's basically anti-Semitism. Anything that resembled Judaism in any way, shape, or form was removed specifically to separate themselves.
Actually, yeah. So historically speaking, the term Judaizer gets thrown around a lot, actually, in the modern age, especially with people who believe like Seamus and I do. Judaizer eventually in early church history became a title that was used for anybody who opposed the inclusion of pagan practices into the faith.
Yeah.
And even the Gospels themselves become more and more anti-Semitic. Like Luke and John have more anti-Semitic language than Mark or Matthew.
Well, so John in particular, because John tends not to distinguish between Sadducee and Pharisee, and it just gives them the title the Jews.
John was not written by John. John was written by his disciples.
Right. It was more or less given by an entire assembly.
Maybe.
Yeah. And so when they make reference to the Jews, it's likely because they're not eyewitnesses. And there's actually a bunch of reasons to believe that the book of John is not written by an eyewitness, because there's geological issues with the landscape. And so it's like, it sounds like it was written by somebody who wasn't there, especially like John 8, which we know gets added in much later. But the fact that that's even written in there, where they just start picking up stones and they're like, this woman is an adulterer, let's kill her. That's not how any of that ever would have happened in Judaism. Yeah. Like
still a dream of mine. But if I prophesize that it's going to happen,
but there's a lot of evidence to say that it was most likely written by his disciples. And so the Sadducees as a sect ceased to exist after the destruction of the Second Temple, and they literally just disappear off the face of the planet. And so when they say the Jews, it's likely because they're not aware that the Sadducees were even a thing when they were writing down his teachings.
I don't know much about the Sadducees, but as far as disappearing off the face of the planet, I feel like literally shouldn't have been thrown in before that. Archaeologically, they disappeared.
so they technically didn't.
Yes.
If you want to learn a little bit about like the Sadducees, just read up on the modern Karaite Jew movement, because that's more or less what the Sadducees were.
So there's a sect that's coming back, type of thing.
Yeah, it's a sect that's making a comeback because of a guy named Nehemiah Gordon, who recently wrote a book and did a presentation called "The Greek Jesus versus the Hebrew Yeshua," where he actually makes a strong case against the oral traditions, which are what founded modern Orthodoxy today and Rabbinic Judaism.
Oral traditions is what founded the origin of pretty much every religion.
Well, yeah, we're talking about a time period that was heavily...
It's oral,
tradition. Yeah. Even Socrates, he never wrote any of his own works because he thought writing was lazy and
that's why when you read his works, who wrote them, they took it off of oral history. So they phonetically wrote everything versus, so any errors you find there aren't closer to God. That's human error, but apparently that's still closer to God.
Well, it's funny because how when TV was invented, everyone was like, well, these kids are just getting lazier. Well, when books were invented, they said the same thing. They were like, well, reading is just because you're lazy,
No.
Well, no, the truth is
no need to memorize anything. You can just write it down now.
That's what they thought of. They were like, not memorizing, that's lazy. Be better.
People using ink on a piece of paper. What is this nonsense? They're so lazy for not trying to scrawl it into stone.
Yeah.
Words on pages. It's just going to rot your brain.
Damn papyrus generation.
Yes.
The reason the Romans slaughtered so many innocents is because of books.
Oh, no. Oh, gosh. So, yeah, sidebar. My mother's visiting, or she was visiting where I live, and she didn't know what she was going to do the last few days because I'm still at work. I'm not going to be home yet. And she was like, well, is there anything good on Netflix? And I told her she should watch Bridgerton because that's totally something that would be up her alley. And in the first 10 minutes of the show, there is a quote. There's a girl that's reading a book, and her mother says, put that book down before you start getting confusing ideas. It's just, I was like, oh, the accuracy. Oh, that hurts. Anyway, back to away.
Books are confusing.
Yeah, it's just
they can be. Life is hard when you're stupid.
Is it? Because I feel like those that say they know all tend to feel like they have a straightforward way of life, whereas those that know more know less.
I pay attention to the way people drive, and that gives me an idea of their actual intellectual
capacity. I do not like it when people say they're from this state, that means they're a bad driver, or the way that they look, that means they're a bad driver. Like, no, drive 12 hours following the same car and decide whether or not you like them or not because of how they drive. Because I drive long distances, and occasionally I have carpooling buddies or caravan buddies that you just make, but I'm still waiting for us to have a button where it's Like if you go buy a car, you can like hit a button and be like, hey, like, where are you heading? I'm going that way too.
For example, if you have a 2-car length, distance between you and the car in front of you, and then a car comes around you and then jumps in that gap, you're a dumb person. That's how.
You obviously have not driven very much in New York. In Long Island,
New York is another animal. Oh, I know.
I was gonna say,
I know New York.
If there's 2 feet of space between 2 cars,
they will
fit a minivan in there.
I'm talking 80 miles an hour on the highway. There's a little gap between. Someone's like, "Fuck you," and they get in between you, and now there's no space between the 3 of you. I'm like, stupid person, you should not be allowed to breed.
Hey, rubbing is racing, don't you know?
Apparently, jeez.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's tough to be educated. You only ever learn how much you don't know. See, that's an inaccurate statement, though, Dustin, because it's tough to be educated because you only ever learn what you didn't know. But as you do that, you realize how much you don't know because you can't honestly know how much you don't know. It's an ongoing cycle, which is why some of the most accredited, most well-educated people in the world are constantly questioning things because they're just like, I don't think I understand this. And the more you hear someone say, I don't understand, the more I value their opinion because they're willing to ask versus assume, which is...
See, every time I learn something new, I forget like 2 things. And then like later on down the line, I'll remember one of those and I'll forget 2. It's like a reverse Hydra effect. So like I'm just like perpetually in this like state of I can't describe it. It's difficult.
I just have the roundabout facts floating in my brain constantly. And then when I want to bring them to the surface, I'm like, I know this fact, but I got to look it up to make sure I'm saying the right numbers that go with it. Like, I have to double check my math.
When you on one TikTok video, you said you've probably forgotten more about Christianity than most Christians will ever learn.
Yeah.
And I've watched some of your videos and I'm like, dang, this guy.
Accurate statement.
Yeah, you know,
after college, like I didn't like study the Bible at all for like 3 years or more than that. Even didn't touch it. Didn't really think about theology. Forgot just about all of it. And then like I got on TikTok and shared my story and got all this attention and started getting a bunch of questions. And I was like, I know this. I knew this very well at one point, and I started pulling old books off and like trying to relearn everything. And I've been doing that for the past 9 months. So yeah.
Yeah.
I've had to do that recently with Christianity because I get a lot of like, what do Christians believe? And I'm like, crap.
Titan.
Hi, Titan.
Hello.
Yeah. Whenever I find a place where I can, settle and actually like put my bookshelves up and take all my books out, the amount of content that's going to come flying onto TikTok is going to be ridiculous because I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember reading this book. I have to tell the people.
Yeah, my problem is I'll say something and I'll assume that everyone like that. I assume that certain things are common knowledge. Forgetting that it's not. Like I treat it like it is, and then I'll get a ton of comments and the questions like, "Wait a minute, what?" And I'm like, "I forgot Christians don't know that. Hold on, I got to make a video explaining this before this video even makes sense."
Yep, that happens a lot. That's
just a quick heads up. It's hurricaning outside, so I might lose signal or something if I disappear.
Oh no!
Are you down in the deep south?
No,
I'm not.
He's
But
in Pennsylvania.
I'm in East Coast. We just got a loud crack of lightning, and it's starting to storm here.
I would say Ida hit Louisiana. So
I was joking when I said hurricaning.
Rachel, Ida has not reached Pennsylvania. It has not. Has it? Ida has not reached Pennsylvania already. It shouldn't be.
No, it just hit New Orleans a little bit
this morning. Yeah. The eye is like over New Orleans now. It's a 6-hour thing.
Rouge or something.
The eye is over New Orleans. Where's the D at? Still got it.
He's such a silly guy. I see what you did there.
It's funny because it's sexual.
It's funny because it's a joke.
Beer. I'm running low. I need a refill.
Yeah. I need a bottle. I don't have a refill.
I might switch to whiskey.
You're just gonna make me drool over here. Just unless it's bad. What whiskey? What are you drinking?
Macallan 12.
Sherry. Oh yeah, nope. That's a good one. I like that one. Yep. Gosh darn
That's
it.
one of my
I
favorites.
got Aberfeldy here.
Do you not have,
I do enjoy the
anymore?
fact that you're drinking a scotch, though. That does make me happy, even though like you have, it just makes me happy. Anyway,
Do you not, Brad? Do you not have the red breast anymore? The 12 year?
No, I finished that.
Hi,
Me and Dad
Morgan.
finished that.
Great one. So that makes sense.
Yep. No, me and Dad finished that.
Yeah, man. So, are there any more questions or maybe sarcastic remarks, comments, concerns?
sarcastic remarks. Oh
Something
man,
from-
I can't pull any of
from the
those out of my
captain
ass
himself?
right now.
Were you enlisted?
Yes, still am.
Okay. Okay.
I was
Wait.
active duty from
Oh.
09 to 12. Went to Iraq, and then I was in active reserve for 4 years while I was in college, and then I joined the National Guard, and I've been in almost 6 years. I'll be done in February.
Oh, so you're still in the Guard?
Yeah.
Okay, dope. Yeah, I'm a reserve Marine, so that's how
Cool.
this happened.
Yeah. How's that feeling?
Wait, hold up. Let me see that again. Put that up there.
Well,
Hold
that's
on.
right. She's not familiar. Yeah,
Oh, are those healing? Will those get pulled out eventually?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I'm surprised I don't have an outward brace around those.
I
But that's,
did.
I did, but I'm
did
working
you
on
stick
physical
your
therapy.
hand in one of the lead press machines?
No, they actually had me like this because they wanted to stretch my. They had tendon repair. Basically, my hand got crushed in a overhead amphibious assault vehicle overhead hatch. It's like a 200-pound ballistic steel.
Oh my god!
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I totally like.
Oh,
I
feel
can
you.
envision that because there's
Yep.
that little lip that you just can put your fingers on, and then it goes.
Yeah, so and usually you sit up. You actually sit pretty high up, like waist high, so that lip is below you, and you're kind of high and you see everything.
But it's right there.
But I'm a combat engineer, and we were about to do a Miklik breach, a mine clearing line charge. It's like 2,000 pounds of C4. The actual number is like 1875, but it's a lot of C4, and we have to button up in order to blow it. And so we were getting ready to roll up on the breach site. So I had actually lowered my seat all the way down to about eye level, just so I could see over and still see when we got to the breach site, but be prepared to pull the hatch in so we could conduct the breach and blow the charge. And the driver, I'd asked the driver, keyed up on the radio, hey, stop just up here. I want to let my guys out, the marking team, to mark the lane. And we were like on a downhill slope, and the man just was like, oh, I heard the word stop. And he slams the brakes. We nearly rolled the vehicle forward.
Oh no!
We were on a really steep downhill slope.
No.
And there's actually two safeties on the hatch, a ratchet strap and a locking mechanism on the
And
hinge.
it both broke.
Both of them broke.
Oh my god!
Yep. And I
No.
no seatbelt in this thing. So I actually grabbed the lip because I was falling forward out of my seat and to keep my eyes from hitting it. So I grabbed it just to brace myself
At
with
least
this
it
hand.
wasn't your face.
And it just.
At least it wasn't your face. At least that
God,
wasn't.
that had
You know
to
what?
hurt so bad.
It was the single
my
most
God.
painful experience in my whole life. And my bones were like powder after that.
Pancakes.
So the tendons were torn.
pancakes. You have to flip them like a crepe. Just plop.
I tell people, you know, when Bugs Bunny shuts his fingers in the doors and you pull them out and it's got like that L-shaped flat.
Yeah.
That's what my hands
That's
look
what they
like.
look like.
It
Yeah.
was so bad.
Yeah, I
Um,
was just wanting to pop this up. So, are there any differences in your versions of heaven or hell from Christians?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I actually do want to know this. I don't think I do. So, I'm curious.
So there are a few thoughts in Judaism on heaven and hell. First of all, the idea that heaven is some alternative place that we all go to is a foreign concept in Judaism. The entire idea is actually kind of to as the Lord's Prayer says, bring heaven here, make this place habitable for holiness again. So the idea of the Garden of Eden, that's what they tend to think of heaven as in Judaism. And there's an understanding that this will be a status that is reestablished by the King Messiah. In addition to that, there is a hell in Judaism of sorts, but it's only like 12 months max. I think just shy 1 month.
I'm converting.
Well, right, because it's more of a refining process.
It's like, hey, you weren't quite good enough, but We'll get you there.
So like you get scrubbed down with a steel brush,
There goes Seamus again. Aww.
But yeah, the idea is that hell is actually a temporary place, and it's meant for refinement to get you ready for heaven, or for the Garden of Eden, as it were. The other thought on those who are unrighteous is sort of called total annihilation, which in
I'm listening. I'm sorry. Come on.
In those terms, so Jews understand that anyone and anything, everything emanates from God first, right? Because if you accept that God exists, then prior to the universe, he was the only thing that existed, and therefore anything that does exist now came from him first. And so in the same way that if I were to take a dropper and isolate a drop of this beer out of the glass, right, and that becomes an individual entity, but as soon as I drop it back in the glass, it loses its self-identity. It becomes part of the whole again. And so the souls of the unrighteous are then returned to the whole, which is God. Ergo, they no longer exist. They just...
So the annihilation isn't you're like wiped off. It's that you merge.
You're erased, more or less.
But it's not an erasal, is it really? Because like there's a piece of you then, but that's part of the whole.
It's not an erasal in a sense of it's more of a complete erasal, actually, because the idea that's presented is actually as though you never existed to begin with. Like that's the idea. It's not that you did exist and now that you don't. It's that you are made as though you never were, because you are now returned to the whole.
Terrifying.
That's comforting. What are you talking about? I love it.
I mean, if I had to believe in something, I feel like that's kind of a terrifying concept. I don't. I'm totally cool with becoming worm food. But it's really weird thinking that way. I like it. It's a little less terrifying than, burning forever and ever. But,
right.
Say there's torture, you just cease. And that's kind of what I like about atheism too. It's like, it's not a belief. It's just like, I just cycle back out. That's fine. It's cool.
Right. Yeah. It's, and it's funny because these things actually are referenced even in the New Testament. So when Paul references the third heaven, he's actually referencing the Garden of Eden, like as it is understood in Judaism. But Judaism acknowledges a level of different, I guess I'll use the word realms, and then 10 dimensions extending from each of those realms. It's a really weird topic to discuss. Fascinating and lengthy, but when you say the third heaven, that's effectively referring to like the third realm of sorts from the one we currently reside in, which would be where they believe the Garden of Eden is being kept. And so Paul actually directly references this philosophy.
Interesting.
He does.
We've got a super chat really quick. Gotta adjust.
Yes.
Hey, Ricky, I saw on your Facebook page that you were deployed to the Capitol shortly after it got stormed. Is that legit?
Is that his accent?
I don't know.
It works.
I'm reading it that way, though. I feel like that's the way he's going to say it.
So like Tony Stark, I just feel like would say, hey, Ricky, I saw on your Facebook page that you were deployed to the Capitol shortly after it got stormed. Is that legit?
That's good.
That was good.
Spot on.
I got chills just now.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that was his picture. I was just going off of like the, hey, Ricky.
All right. Yes, I went to DC after the insurrection on January 6th. There was supposed to be more, particularly one the day before and the day of the inauguration in an attempt to stop it. So we got there, and our job was just to be there as a deterrent. And of course, it worked. We were briefed several times. They had ears on the ground for like the like QAnon. Was an app called at the time? Parler app. So they were keeping track of that, and that's where they're making all their plans, and they kept pushing their plans farther and farther back. Like, hey, the National Guard's here now. Maybe we should move. And eventually, there's someone in there who was like claiming to be connected to Trump and was delivering information straight from him. And he said Trump and I saw these messages. And he was like, Trump told us to stand down. He was going to make his move soon, and he did. And then he just wants us to stay home. Like, oh, since we're here now, right? Like, they're all like up in arms, but then we showed up. So yeah, we were there as a deterrent because there was supposed to be some more shady shit happening, and they all went home. So mission accomplished. It was very cold. I hated it.
I remember the very
I had the
few-
night shift. It was freezing.
I remember talking to you about this like a week after you got back from that particular deployment, and Rachel and I were just kind of making jokes on the comments back and forth about like how you were sleeping in a parking garage and how you were like having to swap back and forth in these weird areas, and just like you weren't doing anything, but you were just there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's got to be a pain in the ass.
Well, we had hotels.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. We each had our own hotel room. We didn't.
Oh,
bunk
that's
up.
nice.
But we worked like 12-hour shifts. And so we'd work for like 3 hours on, 1 hour off or something. And so we'd go like take a nap in the parking garage because, again, we worked the night shift.
Right.
And we're freezing. So we'd go warm up and take a little nap for an hour and then get back out there. But then we'd walk back to our hotel. And the hotel we didn't get to stay in it very much, but it was legit.
Jeremy Hull has a question. He says, there's something for me that started my deconstruction. Is there something that keeps you believing? I believe this is directed to you, Brad. Like a keystone to your faith or proof of God to you. Like, what is it that keeps you on the path of God?
Righteousness.
Right. I wasn't going to say righteousness because I thought it was cheesy, but now I'm okay with it.
That's a good question.
So, that's a great question.
And it might be personal. And if that's too personal, that's fine.
No, I definitely can say that I wouldn't have any proof of God for you, at least not tangible proof that anybody would accept. No, I think really it amounts to personal experience, which there was a point in my life where I didn't exactly have doubts, honestly. There was a point in my life where, like, you might think that I might have turned to atheism because of a struggle that I was going through that I was, quite frankly, pretty angry with God about. And it definitely, the thought occurred to me, and it seemed just easier to deny him altogether. Like maybe just accept that everything is a coincidence and happens for absolutely no reason. But I don't know. I guess I just wasn't satisfied with that answer. And as I've studied Judaism, actually, it's kind of enriched that a little bit, just in certain examples of, I guess, the difference in the way that Judaism was established as a religion versus what is pretty common in other religions. That's a very broad answer, and it's a very broad topic to discuss. But essentially, Judaism holds to the mass revelation that occurred at Sinai versus the individual secret revelation that occurred in the example of Muhammad or Joseph Smith, or really any other religion that you can think of. Typically, the revelation narrative begins with an individual who's isolated and has a revelation. And there is a video where a rabbi actually goes over what he calls a rational comparative religion study, where he attempts to rebuild Judaism the same way that others have been built, and it just doesn't work because the Sinai covenant is unique in history. But other than that, I don't have any like proof of God for you. It just, I guess it would be my own personal satisfaction with any alternative. I just don't. I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that question.
I have a comment to make on it, not so much towards you, but just something you said just kind of triggered something in my little frazzled brain up here. You said that, so a lot of the time religion is based off of someone that goes off and is by themselves and they have a revelation, they come back and they share it, right? Now, I've studied a lot of cultures, and for the sake of ease and for the sake of not being taking this too literally, Seamus, I found you.
Hey,
Gave up and
I
is
just
using his
switched my
phone now.
Right? Yeah, I can see he's changed it up. For the sake of just not trying to clump things together, but also not trying to be too specific, there are a lot of cultures out there, a lot of Native American cultures out there that require as a rite of passage to go out, have a revelation, and come back.
That's interesting.
That is a personal day-to-day thing. Like that's everyone in the culture has to do that. So why is it, do you think, that when it happens with white people, for lack of a better term,
Muhammad was not white.
okay, but how many religions have the white people decided to claim due to this particular activity or this particular action?
Well, so I think the initial premise difference there would be what I would appeal to. So in these Native American cultures, I would assume, and correct me if I'm incorrect here,
It's
that
kind of hard. I'm clumping multiple ideologies and multiple religions. Like, I mean, I'm clumping some together.
Gotcha.
And I'm not naming any specifics because I'm not trying to
discriminate.
I'm not trying to discriminate from one over another,
Right.
and I'm also not trying to focus on those specifically.
So
I just want to discuss the ideology of having these revelations and why some must be grander than others versus like why is it a whole religion gets started on just one guy versus like an entire culture of it.
So I think, again, I think the initial premise here is different. So in these cultures where the entire goal is for an individual to go out and have a spiritual experience or a divine revelation of sorts, those revelations don't effectively alter or change or create a new religion entirely in those cultures. That is just accepted as being part of the religion.
That's fair.
Whereas in the alternative examples, that's what happens, is you get a whole new religion out of it.
But I would argue that there are a lot of people that are within our varying religions of Christianity that have gone out, had these experiences, come back, stated them, and we have immediately tossed them in loony bins. A lot of street preachers, a lot of guys on the corner hailing the apocalypse is near. A lot of people along those lines. So
I would say the difference there is usually because these experiences either do not line up with the biblical record itself or the text of the Bible,
but isn't the whole idea is that it adds something to it? So wouldn't it not be the same?
No, actually.
No. Oh, okay.
Particularly in Judaism, Christianity claims to hold to the same standard.
Okay.
But in Judaism especially, it is forbidden to add to or take away from the revelation which was given by God.
Yes. So that makes sense when it comes to Judaism. But if we're focusing on Catholicism and all of that, they do add to it, and we have a lot of those that do add to it, and some of them stick and some of them don't. And there are a lot of people out there now that say that they have talked to God. There's that one lady that Oz mentioned that says that she's talked to God like thousands of times, and like she's had full discussions with him, and it's weird to me that we are so ready to follow one person easily, but
would
not
be fascinated to have a conversation with that woman.
Oh, I am too. I am too. So Oz is talking. I think he already had her on one of his shows, or he's about to, or something. I really want to listen. I want to be a fly on the wall. Like, I'm very, very intrigued.
Well,
K-Care. That's it. Aunt Kathy knows exactly who I'm talking about. K-Care.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of conversations, we're getting close to the 10-minute mark.
That's true.
Would you be guys down for jumping in the after party on Discord? Are you on Discord?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brad's on Discord.
So we can get everybody in there.
I know
we
Brad's on
hang out for a while.
We're gonna hop on to Dadpool's after show chat, which is just the VC text chat, I believe that's what it's called.
Yeah, just
on the
general
Dadpool
discussion
Dig
chat.
server.
It's public. Just jump in there. We'll be
Mhm.
in there. I'm gonna take a break and I'll be back. But
I'll be there.
We'll just hang out and we'll have some casual conversations for a little while towards bed till it's bedtime.
Would you guys like to link your stuff?
Yeah.
Self.
Where can everyone find you guys?
Yeah.
Oh, so we are on TikTok. You see kind of the way, well, not Seamus, but you see the way that my name is spelled here. That's more or less exactly how it is on TikTok. Alternate Media spelled ALTARNATE Media, Brad. Seamus is Alternate Media Seamus. We are also on YouTube, Patreon, and Apple Podcasts.
But the most popular way to find us is to go into the wilderness and seek out a divine revelation for yourself.
They will appear to you, people. Just ask for them.
We will appear
Seek
to
and
you
ye
from
shall
the heaven
find.
like that of the Son of Man.
And
We
ye
will come
shall
to you
find.
to impart a flat cap upon you and a glass of whiskey.
It's gonna be like Big Kevin from
Make it rum, and I'm interested.
Our religion is based off of weapons and alcohol. So.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is a fair assessment. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Again, if you got some time, come hang out with us in the Discord.
For sure.
Hope please catch us next week. Bye, everyone.
Toodles.
Toodles.
Did he just leave without hanging
He
up?
just dipped.
Oh
Yeah,
my
he did.
God.
It didn't even end the live.
Oh no, he didn't. Oh, hey
We
guys.
hijacked
Okay,
the show.
so give me just a second. I've got to shoot him a message.
We'll say, will it end if we all just get off, or will
No,
it just
it won't.
Keep...
It will keep going.
Oh!
This is something that we've done before.
This is our show now.
It is our show. What do you want to talk about for a hot minute?
Let's do a Captain Dadpool roast while we have his channel.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we have him captive. Okay. Can we talk about
Captain
how
Dadpool,
his hair just
cut
goes
that
like?
hair. I know you think you're gorgeous.
It's so
but it's not that
perfect.
cool.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, I love it.
I know.
So,
I'm actually
did you-
truthfully jealous.
Did you see the Did you see the episode of what is it, Paula whatever, when he got cartoonized? Like they added like wrinkles, but his hair is just so perfect. It's like
just whooshes over.
It's-
He's got the chiseled jaw and the facial hair all worked out. Like,
oh yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh, this is fun.
And he
I've never gotten
forges
hijacked
weapons.
alive.
I still gotta get him to make me a sax.
Paulogia, that's it. Paulogia. It was on Paulogia. Did you guys see that episode of him and Bitty Booty on Paulogia?
No.
Oh, that was that they were recording that episode, and I was helping with some of the project prior to it. And that was I don't know if you saw the TikTok where he goes into a 3-minute rant about why professionals need to be treated as their professional, like their standard, because they actually know what they're talking about. And he mentions it's like somebody that had no credentials made my friend blah 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 cry. He's talking about me because I was listening to Ken Ham. And he was making me sad because we were watching Answers in Genesis, and I was having a full-blown meltdown about how many people were cheering after he was saying these little phrase and quippy little bits, and I'm just like, he's not even reading the whole article. I was flipping out about it. So so like the next day Ricky made that TikTok, and I was like, I love you. I'm so sad.
It's
Say, Bitty Buddha, where's she been? I haven't seen any of her TikToks come across my For
me
You
neither.
page
Did you get
recently.
banned or something?
No, I haven't either.
I hope she
although
didn't
it's funny
get
because I
banned.
do. What?
don't
No,
either.
I don't think she got banned. No, she got banned. I would have heard from it. No, she sends me rock photos like weekly though, because she and her family go rock hounding or just go for hikes and stuff, and they find rocks and they send them to me, and I identify them for her.
That's cool.
I know.
Is
It's
there-
a weird thing that just happens. And I don't mind
there a
it at all.
Discord link?
But I was gonna say, Rachel, can you fix things?
Is there a link for the Discord?
No, but I can.
Hey, he's back.
You scared
All right.
me.
All right.
Use your magic hair powers.
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
ending-
Gaz, magic hair came back.
All right, I'm ending things officially now.
Okay, cool. It was fun hijacking while it lasted. Anyway, see you all at Discord.
and broadcast.
Bye.